Thank you everyone for joining us tonight for this special Coaches Corner. Actually, we call it a Coaches Clinic. Tonight we're going to be covering the Innovation Project. So I hope everyone here is for that. My name is Louis Rubo. I am the Program Delivery Partner for First LEGO League in Nevada. We did this workshop, Coaches Clinic, webinar, whatever you like to call it, last year, and found a lot of positive responses to it. So we thought, let's do it again. This year, of course, we'll do it with the Submerged theme in mind. So for the next hour, I'm going to talk exclusively about the Innovation Project portion of the First LEGO League program. How we're set up here is, of course, through Google Meet. If you wouldn't mind muting yourself for now, you do have opportunities to ask questions later, which you can unmute yourself then. As I'm going along, please feel free to put your questions in the chat. We do have one of our judge advisors in Nevada here to help answer them. We have some of our program delivery partner coordinators also helping us out. So feel free to throw your questions in the chat. And like I said, there will be opportunities for you to ask questions verbally, if you like, along the way. So definitely have those questions ready to go. So these slides are available to you already publicly. We maintain a public resource folder within our Google Suite. This repository here stores all of our presentation slides along with our workshop slides. And later on for our Nevada-based teams, this is where we keep our event information as well. So the slides for tonight have already been posted in there. If you're interested, you can just follow that QR code and go under the workshop section, and you will find a folder for this particular event tonight. Like I said, now these slides, the difference between what you're going to see tonight and what's in the folder is I upload my slides with the presenter notes available. So you can see all the words I intended to say and probably forgot to say. It also includes hyperlinks as well, and additional information that I may just not have time to cover. Please feel free to go in there and download them and share them with your coaches who were not able to make it tonight. We are also recording this. It'll take about 24 hours or so after October 1st to get this posted, and we will put it on our Nevada YouTube playlist for First LEGO League. So you will be able to go back and review both the slides and the recording for tonight. So here's my agenda for this evening. Basically, I broke it down into 3 distinct sections. Oh boy, I hope I'm not tongue-tied tonight. 3 distinct sections. I want to start off with just kind of giving a big overview, coming at it from, let's look at the First LEGO League program at large and highlight where the Innovation Project sits within that larger program. Then I want to move into how you might, as a coach, develop with your team an Innovation Project solution that is specific to this year's theme. Then I want to finish up with an important part of it, which is you and your team presenting your solution to the judges when you get to an event. So we will have 3 distinct sections. I will pause at the end of each section to allow for questions. And as I said, if you have any along the way, please feel free to put them in the chat. Other thing I want to say is I am referencing and will be referencing a number of resources that are available to you. All of these resources you can get to by going to the firstinspires.org website. If you hover over the programs tab and move over to the game and season section, click on that, you'll end up at the First LEGO League area. And then you want to go under the challenge area, the challenge division, click on that in the menu, and you're taken to one of the most important websites of all for you as a coach. This is the challenge updates and resource page for First LEGO League Challenge. And some of the most important documents you'll need in regards to the Innovation Project is you will need to know about the engineering notebook and the accompanying team meeting guide, along with the judging rubrics, which we'll talk about later on tonight. These are really your most important documents when it comes to the Innovation Project. So I want to make sure that everyone is aware of them. There are other documents out there and other resources for you to use, but these really are your starting points and items that you really need to know about early in the season. As you progress through the season, there are additional items, some of which I'll talk about tonight. So as I advertised, let's start off with talking about what is the purpose of the Innovation Project. This section is really kind of my evergreen section because this is one of the key parts of all the First Lego League program, and it's been around forever. And it's one of the most important parts of it. I know personally, when I first got involved with First Lego League, I did it because of Lego robots, I'm not going to lie. But I was very quickly taken over by the Innovation Project. It is a great opportunity for our teams and our coaches specifically to learn about something in the world and to think of creatively about a solution to it. And I hope through the course of this evening and the next hour, I kind of convince you that the Innovation Project is amazing, and it provides opportunities that the robot game doesn't. So that first document I want to reference here is the engineering notebook. Everyone who registers with FIRST is provided a couple hard copies of the engineering notebook. You can also access digital versions of this by following that QR code. I also showed you in an earlier slide where you can access these through the FIRST Inspires website. The engineering notebook, to remind you, is that document, or I should say it's a notebook, that really should end up in the hands of your student. It is a way for you to have your students record their accomplishments throughout the season, to keep their notes organized, and to really give them guidance on what they should be doing from meeting to meeting. The engineering notebook is an essential key reference and resource that all coaches should be going to. Now, it does give you some guidance on suggestions for how to proceed through the season. Keep in mind, these are only suggestions, but there are some key pages that I'm going to reference here that are essential for you as a coach to understand as well as to point your team members toward. Starting right at the very beginning of this engineering notebook, there is a welcome page that really sets the context for what First Lego League Challenge is all about. It discusses the core values as well as what is gracious professionalism and cooperation. These really are our foundations of what FIRST is about, and it's important that we all read through them, understand them, and most importantly, apply them as you progress through the season. The other document, other page that's early in this document is a very concise kind of list of the deliverables a team needs to give throughout the season. So there is the robot design, the robot game, and innovation project areas of where a team needs to actually produce something. And of course, that's all within the wrapper of the core values of how we do it. And so there is a page dedicated really nicely to discuss what is it that the team is working to present to the judges when you get to the event, as well as what the robot should do in the robot game. So I really want to highlight that page there. I showed on the right-hand side there. A lot of times, some of our coaches forget about a portion of the program, and this page there really highlights what are those tangibles, those deliverables that we need to provide at the end of the season. So what teams are evaluated on at the end of the year when they arrive at a competition are 4 core areas. The first area is really the one that we visually see. I know it's the hook that brings a lot of us, and like I mentioned earlier, it's the hook that brought me into the program. It's the robot game. This is the thing that happens in the gym with the nice music going, our MCs cheering on. It's a wonderful part that visually everyone gets to see. It's a lot of fun, and it's the objective part of our program because there's a clear scoring process that goes through that. This, though, only counts for 25% of what the teams are overall evaluated on at a competition. Besides the robot game, our judges want to hear, well, how did the team actually design that robot? How did they program it? What was the engineering design process behind that robot that went out there and was able to complete these missions? That represents another 25% of the First Lego League program. Of course, what we're here for tonight is the Innovation Project. The Innovation Project is a separate portion, another 25% pie, if you will. The Innovation Project, as we'll discuss throughout the night, is yet another opportunity for our teams to apply the engineering design process within the overall theme of the year. This year, of course, being Submerged. This is an opportunity for teams to go out and study the real world. What is going on around us in our lives? What kind of problems exist in there? And for them to come up with unique solutions to those problems. Now, those 3 areas together are 75% of what teams are evaluated on. They are really what we do when we're working with our teams, and is what the teams present when they get to an event. The last 25% is not what we do, it's how we do it. And those are the core values. There are 6 core values that span across all of the FIRST programs. Of course, they're discovery, innovation, impact, inclusion, teamwork, and fun. These 6 core values is what we should be doing every time we meet as a team, and starting to recognize and reflect on the usage of these core values as we progress through the season. And ideally, we start adapting them and using them in our lives outside of FIRST. They are just as important, and they represent another 25% of what teams are evaluated on when they come to a competition. So all this together, as you can see, represents the 4 core areas of what teams are evaluated on when they come to an event. Now, one of the key questions I keep getting year after year is, how does the innovation project pair or integrate into the robot game? Well, it's really up to you as a team. Some teams develop them in parallel and completely separate. That's an option as well. Some teams find inspiration in the robot game for their innovation project. But one of the key things I want to emphasize here is you're building a robot to solve missions over on the Submerged side of things in the robot game. That robot and the Legos that are involved with that robot game do not need to be integrated into the innovation project. And I do use my words carefully. They do not need to be. Sometimes some teams find creative ways to do it. For the most part, the innovation project is done in parallel to the robot game. And this is done on purpose because these are 2 distinct areas where teams can explore a particular theme. They can develop new ideas and new understanding about that theme. They get to solve problems related to that theme. And they, in both areas, get to use the engineering design process. So just to hit home here, the robot game and innovation project are 2 separate areas of the FIRST LEGO League program. They can be done separately and in parallel to each other. And in fact, if you're following the engineering notebook, they are largely developed simultaneously. You do not have to necessarily force them together, although some teams do find nice ways to do that. But that's really your team's choice and how you work the innovation project in with the robot game, if at all. All right, so your team has now survived the season. You've built your robot, it solves missions. You've done your robot design. You have an understanding of the engineering design process behind it. You have developed your innovation project. What now? Well, you arrive at a competition where you will go into a judging room and you will have an interview with some adult judges. And during that time, there's a very structured 30 minutes in which you have a conversation coupled with some presentations about the things your team has accomplished and achieved through the season. This is a standardized structure, so regardless of where you're competing, this is the judging flow chart, if you will, of what your team is going to do during that 30 minutes. So your team walks into the room, and there's a meet and greet between the team and the judges, a couple minutes there. And then what's going to happen is your team is going to be given 5 minutes of uninterrupted time to present their innovation project. I'm going to touch on what that presentation is like towards the end of this discussion, but for now, I just want to highlight where it sits in the judging process. So the team comes in and they give a 5-minute uninterrupted presentation on all of their work related to the innovation project. The judges will then have 5 minutes of Q&A with the team to flesh out some additional items, ask the questions that maybe weren't addressed there, or just to learn more about the cool stuff our teams are coming up with. After that, there's a quick rapid transition where we put the innovation project stuff to the side, and the team will start discussing the robot design. They again will have a 5-minute window to present whatever they like about the robot design, and then there will be a Q&A following with it afterwards. So all the robot design is given a 10-minute allocation as well. I'm not going to spend too much time on it because tonight's all about the innovation project, but I want you to see where it sits within the judging flowchart. New this year, there has been an adjustment. There's now a final share and feedback section for 8 minutes where we have discussions going back and forth between our judges and the team. The core values, as we'll discuss a little bit more later tonight, all kind of fit into this because the core values is how we do this process. So it's being judged a little bit differently this year. So I really want to point out one of the cool things about the innovation project. When we're doing our robots and we're designing them and we're programming them and then we put them on the field to compete, It is very much an obvious application of the engineering design process. The idea is we're given a challenge, we're given a problem. We design our robots to solve that problem. In this case, it's the missions on the submerged field. What we do then is we create that solution and we iterate the solution. The robot never does what we expect the first time. So we make adjustments in the program, we make adjustments in our design of it, maybe the peripheral, the attachments, maybe we start at a different location and then we try it again. This is a clear application of the engineering design process, but it's done in a very constrictive environment. We're told about the missions ahead of time. We're told how they're scored. We're told that we have 2.5 minutes to do this. And we have these very strict rules related to the robot game, which is great. It's a lot of fun, but recognizes an engineering design process in a very confined set of rules. Parallel to that, and this is the part I hope teams start appreciating, is that the innovation project part is really the same thing, but without the constraints of the robot game. What you're given here with the innovation project is you still have a problem. Teams are invited to go out and learn about the oceans this year and the exploration of them. Find out what is the challenges with exploring the oceans. Come up with an idea, test that idea, iteratively go back and try to come up with a better version of that idea and keep going around in the circle, just like we do with the robot game. You should be also doing this with the innovation project. These are two wonderful applications of the engineering design process done in parallel to each other. The major difference here is that robot game has a lot of constraints on it. There's only certain ways to score missions. Over in the innovation project, a lot of constraints are lifted and the teams are given literally the entire world to explore. And I really would invite you to take advantage of that when you're thinking about that innovation project. It is a great opportunity to explore the world, come up with a creative solution, make it a better world, and then share that with other people. And that's what the innovation project is really all about. So I'm going to pause. I'm going to take a sip of my tea. I see a couple questions jumping in there. Grace, is there anything I need to address?
So I was kind of addressing it right now, but one of our coaches asked if the coaches can go in the room with the teams when they present. You are allowed 2 adults, whether you guys get to pick who those adults are. They can be coaches, mentors, or parents. We do ask that whoever goes into the room with the students, that they do not talk to the students while they are in the room. This is opportunity for the teams to shine, and we don't want the coaches to get involved with that, their presentation and performance. You guys are allowed to record, but we just ask that you kind of are away from the kids, like either behind the judges or off to the side. Yeah, we don't want you guys to be a distraction to them either. Yeah.
Okay, and I just want to point out, Grace, for those who may be outside Nevada, those are the rules we use in Nevada in terms of allowing judges in the room as silent flies on the wall to observe. Some of our territories outside Nevada may have different processes for involving adults in the judging process. So just to put that little asterisk behind it. But yeah, in general, we do invite our coaches in the room, just the 2 coaches, and they have to silently watch and enjoy what their team has done for the season. Anything else?
It looks like Lanami answered or pointed to the question of the season prompt. The season prompt is very specific in the sense that each word is valuable. I believe Rubo's probably going to go into that tonight.
Yes, I am.
But it is about exploration of the ocean specifically. From the judge's perspective, as a judge advisor, teams can, I say loosely, can make a project that isn't connected to the ocean. But you might, I wouldn't say you would lose points, but we are looking for that ocean aspect. But we are, at the end of the day, looking at the quality of how you're presenting, how you're relaying that information, and what research you've done.
Great. Sounds good. I'm going to move forward because I know I'm seeing some questions on here on topics that I will be covering moving forward. So the next section I want to cover is developing an innovation project solution, and very much specifically within the submerged theme. As we've already touched on, there is a prompt that teams are provided with that they should be addressing as they develop their innovation project. So again, I'm going to return to that engineering notebook. It is such a valuable tool, and all the teams are provided access to it, both in a hard copy and digitally. So either way, use your favorite version. If you turn to the innovation project page, there's a nice context story about the oceans and the importance of them and exploring them. And then in very large font, there is this year's prompt. And this is the thing that all teams need to think about as they're developing their innovation project. This year's prompt reads, this season, your challenge is to dive into a problem faced by people who explore the oceans. And that is the, if you will, diving board that we jump off of. And we're going to start diving deeper into the ocean about the things our teams should be looking at as part of the innovation project. As Grace mentioned, each word in that statement has value and purpose. And so we need to very carefully break it down. So the first section is of high importance is problem faced by people. So that's really important to keep in mind. The prompt very specifically tells us that the challenge this year is it has to deal with a problem faced by people. So we have to think about what parts of the ocean affect us as people and what can they potentially be an issue with. Second part is it has to not only be people, but it has to be a certain type of people, the people who explore. So we need to look at those people who are interested in studying the ocean. What is the problem faced by the people and the people who explore? That's important. And it's not just any explorers, of course. With this year's overall theme, it's exploring the oceans. So we need to put all of those three key elements together when your team thinks about what is their innovation project solution going to look for. It needs to be something that addresses a problem faced by people. Those people have to be those who explore, and very specifically explore the oceans. So when the team is isolating and figuring out exactly what is it that they want to do for the innovation project, make sure it addresses those three key parts of the innovation project prompt. Now, I'm speaking as someone here in Las Vegas in the middle of a desert. This may be a challenge to think about. I'm quite far from the ocean. So how might I learn more about these sort of problems faced by people who do explore the oceans? Well, inside of the engineering notebook, there are a few project sparks. These are very concise statements by professionals who are, in that fact, studying the ocean. They give a nice little background of who they are in terms of their careers, and they finish each of these project sparks with a bold question of, what can you do to help us out? These are a great starting point, and I want to emphasize this is a wonderful first step. This does not have to be your innovation project. So you might look at the third prompt there, and it says, I'm an oceanographer. I am very interested in unlocking the mysteries of the deep sea. It can be difficult and expensive to study this part of the ocean. We don't always know what we're looking for. It might be an undiscovered species, a shipwreck, or a geological formation. Can you help me improve the way we collect or analyze artifacts found in the abyss? This is a great starting thought for our teams. Important thing here is your team does not have to pick one of these project sparks as your innovation project. These are just supposed to be thought-provoking to get you started in a particular area. And moreover, one of the things that each of these project sparks does is it ties into a handful of the robot game missions. In this particular case, missions 9, 11, and 15 all have a very strong tie to this oceanographer. And that's true throughout all of the robot game missions. If you look to the robot game, there's a lot of inspiration on the board about places you can look for to think about your team's innovation project. Besides the project sparks, there's these challenge stories. And I've seen and heard some questions about what are these challenge stories actually about? Were there fun nonverbal illustrations that your team might study and look at to kind of find more inspiration, more motivation about ideas and problems that are faced by people who explore the ocean? If you look at them very carefully, each one of them is tied to a robot game mission as well. So there's some context and backstory to the robot game missions. But again, I do want to emphasize, your team does not have to tie in their innovation project to a project spark or challenge stories. These are just meant to be resources for your team to start the discussion. What is it that your team is interested in? What type of solution might they come up with? And then from there, developing that solution further using the engineering design process. These are just fun, creative ways for your team to ask questions. They are not the requirement in moving forward for the innovation project. One of the other things that I really love about the innovation project in general, not just this year, but overall, is it exposes future leaders about career opportunities they may not have thought of. Again, I live in the middle of a desert. I'm not surrounded by many people who study the ocean. This year's theme allows me, through the career connection, to go out and find out, what do people who study the ocean, what are their careers like? How did they get there? What did they study in school? What is their day-to-day lives like? And students, through the innovation project, are exposed to careers that they maybe hadn't thought about during school. And this might start them on a path they never would have once considered. So as a coach, one of the things you really should be working with in your team is giving them these career connections so that the students can start discovering career paths that they may never have considered. So again, these are wonderful resources. They also provide you a little bit of information about what are some of the challenges in their career. What are some of the problems that they have to work through themselves. So there's two sets here. At the end of the engineering notebook, you'll find the career connections, little stories. If you follow the QR code there, you're taken to a playlist that first is put together of very short videos, again, sharing some of the careers involved. The last thing that these are very helpful for is if you would like to, as your team, to find a STEM professional that can give your team advice on their solution, these are the careers you want to look to. These are the individuals you would want to reach out to and say, hey, would you mind if our team interviewed you for 10, 20, 30 minutes so that we can learn more about what you do and the problems you face, and maybe we can provide you a solution. When I coached a number of years ago for Nature's Fury, we talked to firefighters who were battling fires in the forest. And we found out how the roots will always stay on fire long beyond the forest itself. It's something we discovered by connecting with someone in the profession and hearing what their problems are and what challenges they face. So these career connections are very valuable. I would definitely encourage you to explore them further with your team and maybe use them as a stepping stone in your innovation project. So going back to our engineering notebook, and again, I want to emphasize this, the things in the engineering notebook, especially once you start getting into the sessions, are really suggestions for your team. If you're a newer team, I would suggest you probably follow them pretty closely. As you become more veteran, you will have your own nice ideas about how your team is going to get through the season. But if you're younger, I would definitely suggest following the engineering notebook and the team meeting guide that goes with it to help get your team from the very beginning, the kickoff, all the way to competition. So if you are following the engineering notebook, it does provide kind of an incremental progression through the innovation project. In the first 4 sessions covered in the engineering notebook, it really has a team starting to explore those project sparks, kind of getting the teams to brainstorm and think about what could their team kind of develop a solution for. In the middle part of the season, your team will then pick a solution and it'll focus on a solution to that problem, and it'll start developing a full solution. And I do want to go back to an idea we said earlier. The innovation project is an application of the engineering design process. So it's not that your team comes up with a solution immediately, writes it down on paper and moves on. Is that what's going to happen is you're going to come up with an idea, share that with others, get feedback, and iteratively improve on that idea. And that's going to happen here in the middle part of your season. Then what's going to happen at the end of the season, right before you get to competition, is you're going to take that finalized version, You're going to make sure you have a nice representation of it, be it a little physical model or maybe a drawing. And you're going to come together and put together a presentation of that solution for the judges. So that's kind of your roadmap through the season. The very first part of the season, you're going to just explore ideas related to exploring the ocean. The middle part is you're going to take one of those challenges that explorers of the ocean have, figure out a solution, and iteratively improve it. And then the later part of the season, you're going to then make a representation of your solution together with a presentation of it to share with the judges. One thing I definitely want to highlight here is you cannot do the innovation project in 1 or 2 meetings late in the season. This is something that your team should be working on throughout the season. You really do need to start at the beginning and very smoothly, as a marathon approach, develop that innovation project starting at the beginning of the year all the way right up to the competition. Some of our teams, for whatever reason, might not get the robot game emission models in the mail right away. That's okay. You can start in on the innovation project right away at day 1. We know what the prompt is for Submerge. Go ahead and start working with your team members even before maybe you have those Legos for the missions. So, a couple weekends ago, we had a nice workshop here in Nevada, and one of the things we did is we gave our students some prompts. These prompts themselves were ways to initiate them thinking about this year's idea and maybe kind of give them some direction on how that team might work towards our innovation solution. So these are the questions we asked teams. They were working in teams at a round table. We gave them a large sheet of paper, and we asked them a series of questions. The first question we asked the teams is, hey, just as a team, off the top of your head, list 5 interesting things that your team wants to know about the oceans. And I keep using this example with Grace, shark migration. How do sharks move about in the ocean? Are they always in the same place? Do they go to new locations? How do you study shark migration? So that's the one I picked. Step 2 is you take, as a team, those 5 ideas, pick one of them, and think about how an expert might study that topic. So coming back to the shark migration, well, you would maybe want to capture a shark and put a tag on it and then track that shark as it moves around throughout the year, right? That's an idea. So at this point, the teams thought about things that interest them. They picked one as a team. So this is a process they do as a team using their core values. Then they think about that expert who is studying that topic. The next thing I challenged the teams to do with is brainstorm what are some of the challenges that might be involved with this topic. If you're an expert who is studying shark migration, what might be a problem? What might be one of the challenges? My first thought is, how do you capture a shark, right? Or how do you keep a tag on a shark? And there's all kinds of things you can explore, right? But getting the kids to start thinking about this, right? We start very global of what interests them about the oceans. Then we think about the experts who study a particular part of the ocean. Then we think about the challenges those experts face. And then the last thing we do is what can we do to help them, right? What can we do to provide some impactful way to allow them to study the oceans? And this little exercise, the teams found very helpful because they started from a blank slate, a lot of them, and they were able to, through these just very 4 rapid questions, zero in on a topic. And then from there, they can go back to their teams and start doing homework, right? Is there initial thoughts about what might be an expert and what they study? Is that valid? Are the problems they're seeing, is that true? Is the solution that we came with on the fly, has it been done already? If it's so, can we make it better? Right? These are the homework problems then if you come out of this little activity that might be helpful. So again, as I wrap up the end of this section, I just want to highlight the engineering design process is baked into the innovation project. And one of the great things about the innovation project is it literally provides the entire world to your team to apply that engineering design process. Your team starts by identifying a problem. And then it does some research on that problem and comes up with some solution ideas. It starts designing and creating that solution more specifically. It shares their solution, but not the final version. It shares ideas along the way of what their solution might look like, and they collect feedback, and they use that feedback to make changes to their solution. And they go around in circles doing this over and over again. And then at some point they go, you know what, our solution is pretty good. We're ready to share this with the world. And that's the communication part at the end of the engineering design process. And of course, when you go out and communicate, then you find out something you forgot, and you go right back into your loop again. But I really, as a coach, I would encourage you to think about how the innovation project isn't just a necessary task as part of the First LEGO League Challenge program. It really is an opportunity. It's a way for you and your team to explore some part of the world and the challenges faced in that exploration, and to come up with an impactful solution to it. Okay, I'm going to take a little break. Any questions here? Boy, that chat has been strolling along.
Yes. Wow, you guys have asking such great questions. So many things. I would like to point out a couple of the things. So I lost the thread. So one of the questions was, do you need a model for when presenting? You do not have to have a particular type of model, but in the rubric there is a section in Create.
Sorry, I'm gonna actually cover that very specifically.
Oh, perfect. Yeah. So perfect. Okay. And then let's move on to a different one. As far as experts, that's a loose term, but just someone that is knowledgeable in that area that you guys are looking into. It is challenging in the sense of the desert. I put a couple recommendations in there, such as the Desert Research Center, Water District, Southern Nevada Water Authority, and Springs Preserve. Those are all good places to start if you're looking for an in-person interaction. Even though they are technically based locally in the desert, they have a lot of knowledge about water, and they might be able to point you in the direction that you're looking for.
And Grace, I'd like to add to that, with the internet these days, email communication is just as valid, as well as just doing internet call. You do a Google Meet, a Zoom meeting, talking with the experts that way. As a former scientist myself, I would love to share what I did in my days with students and future STEM leaders. So just reach out by email and start a conversation that way and develop it through that.
Yes, absolutely. Let's see. There's something. Oh, engineering notebooks. So when you go into the judging room, you have your time to present, and the judges will absorb as much information as your team can provide. That includes the information that's being communicated through talking, as well as any visuals that you have, if that's a poster board, if there's a physical model, maybe you have someone dressed up as something, however your team decides to present it. You can also bring your engineering notebook. However, the teams are asked that you can't leave anything with the judges. So the content that you guys are giving is only in the room. So the judges might have a couple minutes to look it over while the kids are talking, but we're really trying to pay attention to the information that the kids are providing through their visuals and their speaking. So there's going to be little emphasis on the engineering notebook itself. You can also, I suggest, if you wanted to include some type of engineering notebook, maybe highlight the specific pages and put tabs on them so that they can go directly to them. That's very beneficial, and that's used a lot at Worlds just because there's so much data. Yeah.
And I would add to that, the engineering notebooks are not a requirement. Teams do not have to use them. I just encourage them. You do need to read the first few pages because it does have the prompt, but they are not required as part of judging. They're just a very useful, powerful resource for the teams to get through that season.
I think those are all the big questions if you want to move on to your next section.
I do. Well, the last section of tonight's webinar is actually presenting an innovation project solution. So the last section kind of gave you some ideas of, well, first off, what is this year's submerged prompt? and making sure you address that particular prompt, giving you some ideas of where you might start with your team and working towards that innovation project solution. Now I want to start kind of focusing on the back end. At the end of the season, when you're in the judging room, what is that like? What are the judges looking for? And that really comes down to this last section of tonight's workshop. So I'm going to return again to that judging flowchart that I presented earlier. This is one of the biggest bummers, I think, is that the team is going to spend a couple months developing this awesome idea, this very impactful solution to a real world problem. They only get 5 minutes to present it, and then they get 5 more minutes of Q&A. So it's very important to spend some time actually working on that communication portion to make sure that you maximize those 5 minutes. Find the best way to communicate all of your essential information with the judges in those 5 minutes. In the dream world, the judges are speechless after 5 minutes. They're like, wow, we can fill out our rubric and we're ready to go. But realistically, 5 minutes is really short, and you're going to have a great conversation. At least the kids are going to have that conversation with the judges. They're going to explore some ideas that maybe their presentation didn't get a chance to cover, or maybe just a curious judge is just going to want to learn more. And so this is a great opportunity for the kids themselves to show off what they've learned throughout the season. But again, it happens in a very, very short window. So you as a coach, make sure your kids are prepared to present their hard work in that 5-minute presentation. Now, it's no secret what the judges are going to be looking for. The rubrics are public knowledge. So the rubrics are already published. You can use the QR code there to go to the First Inspires website. You can download the rubrics right now. I'm not going to dive into all the changes this year, but if you are a veteran coach, there are some major changes to this year's rubrics. There's no longer a separate isolated core values rubric. It's now the core values are integrated into the other two. But for what I want to talk about tonight, there is an innovation project rubric that you can download right now and literally look through the items on the rubric to find out what the judges are going to be looking for. As it's not a surprise that each of the criteria on the rubric are literally following along with engineering design process. So if we take that innovation project rubric specifically, and we think about on the side, what are the key elements of the engineering design process? What we find is they're mapped exactly and explicitly onto the rubric. There's an identify section, there's a design section, a create section, an iterate section, and a communicate section. These are what the teams are going to be measured on within the innovation project. So as you're progressing with them through the season, Coach, I would invite you to look through this project and make sure your team is addressing each of these items. So let's look at them a little bit more in depth ourselves. The very first section of the innovation project rubric is the identify section. As a former judge myself, I was surprised at how many times teams didn't really have a firm grasp of what their problem was and what they're solving. Make sure that the students understand what exactly the problem is that they came up with as a team. Make sure they articulate that problem to the judges. Sometimes the team has a really good idea. They know exactly what the problem is, but they just don't communicate it well. And so make sure you're practicing with the team to make that problem very concise and very directed to this year's prompt. The other thing is we want to see that you've done some homework. Right? If you want to see that you've gone out and actually identified not only a problem, but have you done some background research on it? Right? What are the resources that your team is using to support their exploration, their journey through that innovation project? The design section is really about, is your team applying that engineering design step where they take a problem and they come up with an effective way to come up with a solution to address that problem? And so we want to see what is the structure of your team operating as they work their way through that innovation project solution. We want to see some sort of project plan in there, right? What resources you use, how did that inform their decisions about making a solution? How did they iterate based on that information? We also want to see that all of the team is involved. We want to see that inclusivity that is one of the first core values. We want to make sure that your team of, say, 8 members, you didn't have just 2 people being the experts in the project while another 6 are off doing the robot game. We want to make sure complete involvement. One of the key things and one of the core values of FIRST is teamwork. We want to make sure that everybody's involved in this process. Next, we want to look at create, right? We want to be able to see that they've come up with a solution, that they explain that solution, and it's innovative, right? So we want to see all those key parts of it. We want to have an explanation of an innovative solution. Also, and this is what Grace was touching on a few minutes ago, the team needs to provide the judges with some sort of representation of their solution. Sometimes that might be a prop that is a physical model. It might be a prototype. It might be some scaled down model of it, or it might be a drawing, right? But as a coach, you know that sometimes students might produce a very simple drawing, or they might produce a very complicated drawing. And so the different levels within the criteria are being evaluated are, is the team presenting the judges a nice detailed representation that clearly expresses what their solution is? It doesn't have to be a model and a drawing. It just needs to be a representation. It can be either a model / prototype, or it can be a drawing. Now, do recognize there is a subtlety in the difference between a model and a prototype. A prototype is like a actual item itself that is a version of the solution. A model might be a scaled down version of it, or a larger size maybe if it's a small item. But it's still, we want to see some representation of your solution. We don't want to just hear words. We want to see a visual representation as well. Iteration is so important. Nobody gets it right the first time on anything we do. That's just parts of life, unfortunately. But we want to see that, one, the team is constantly working towards a better version of it. And this comes in 2 parts. One is they need to share with people ahead of time. They need to share their intermediate solution with people. And then they want to take those sharing moments and bring back information they got, some feedback, and they make changes based on that. That's so crucial. We are always looking at ways to impact the world. That's one of the first core values. The way we impact the world is we make sure we're contributing to it in ways that people need it. So we need to share with everyone what our idea is, get their feedback, and make iterative improvements to address those needs. The iterate section really does that. And this is one of the sticking points here is if your team isn't pacing itself through the season, it won't have time to share with someone along the way, get that feedback, and make changes based on it. So it's really important that your team starts working on that innovation project earlier in the year so that it has time to come up to a solution, share it, get feedback, and then make changes to their solution based on that feedback. Of course, what's the point of doing this work unless at the end of the day we actually share the great accomplishments that our teams come up with? Communication is so important. It is the way we learn about ideas that others have. They have to communicate those ideas with us. Your team, likewise. They've done some great work. They've come up with an innovative idea. They have a wonderful solution that has an impact on the world. But unless they tell others about it, it's not, the value just isn't there anymore. So what we want to do as part of this is communicate with the judges and ideally the rest of the world what they have done. So as part of that, they're going to come up with a presentation that clearly explains what their solution is and that they have reflected on the potential impact it has on the world. So they should have some idea. And that doesn't mean they have to have hard numbers or anything like that. They just need to have a good kind of reflective thought about, you know, what we're doing here has an impact. And they have to see that and share that idea with the judges. We also want them to take pride in the work and see there's enthusiasm. We want to see that the team was invested in this idea. So this isn't just loud screaming. This is, we want to see genuine, wow, curiosity coming through. What really motivated this team? Are they having an impact on their community? Are they having an impact on a lot of people? Or it could be an impact on a small amount of people, but it's so important to a small amount of people. And to see that genuine curiosity, that genuineness of they are enthusiastic about what they did. That's what the judges want to see in that communication section as well. Now, new this year is the core values. Rather than having that separate section, a separate rubric, because the core values are really how we do things, what's happening this year is we're really going to test that idea, and we're going to evaluate the core values inside of the innovation project and the robot design. So when you look at your rubrics this year, you'll notice that certain criteria have a little gear in front of them. Those items on the rubrics count doubly towards both that individual topic, say the innovation project or robot design, and they count towards your core values. So when you're working with your team, just highlight. That's why the rubric might look a little weird on certain lines, is that those particular items also double count for the core values area as well. This is a major change to this year, so just be aware of it. Instead of having a separate core values rubric, what we have is the third page is where we gather up all of the comments and feedback that the judges have for our teams. And these are the same feedbacks that we've had in the prior years, where you have a very, wow, you just impressed the judges with this comment. And then you have that, what maybe your team might think about in the future comment as well. So those are going to be the third page now. So just be aware of that. The rubrics do look a little different. There's also some word choices that have changed if you're a veteran coach. So do make sure you read through those rubrics very carefully. Now, the last bit is I did talk about you only have 5 minutes as a team to communicate to the judges the amazing awesomeness that your team did. How do you do that? Well, that's the fun part, is your team can come up with any creative way to express and share with the judges what they did. It can be a skit, it can be a play, it can be a news broadcast, it can be just whatever you want it to be. That's the beauty of it. A lot of times we've heard this story of like, well, why don't you just share a video of a team that does a great job? We could, but then a lot of teams will just try to mimic it. We really want you to go out there and think creatively. Now, I do invite you to go on YouTube. It's one of the great resources in our generation. Go to YouTube and look at multiple videos. Don't just look at one. Look at multiple videos and think of ideas of how teams have, over the last few years, thought creatively expressing their innovation project. And then find what fits best with your team. Now, this might involve some props. It might involve some costumes. It might involve some cheers. Those are all wonderful things, and they're really kind of effective. But at the end of the day, what they're being judged on and what goes on their score is those items on the rubric. It's not how cute the costume is. It's not how shiny the sign is. It's how the students share the items on the rubric. The peripheral stuff just enhances the experience. It does show some of the enthusiasm. It does show some of that generosity, that genuineness. But remember, the rubric is the end story. That is what we're trying to communicate with the judges. But do be creative. Find some fun ways for them to express and share what they came up with. I don't want to tell you what's the perfect way, because there isn't one. Every team, I'm always wowed year after year seeing these kids come up with some demonstration, some cheer, some story. Some are very personal. Some are so creative. It's all over the place. So, spend some time thinking about how your team wants to share with the judges their job. I want to finish on one last topic here. And going back to our rubric, because that is the centerpiece of evaluating what the teams have done. When you look at the rubric, each criteria is expressed or measured at 4 different levels. There's the beginning, developing, accomplish, and exceeds. With the first 3 levels, there is text to tell us what the judges are, as objectively as they can, what they are looking for with the teams. So when you're working with your teams throughout the season, getting them prepared for the innovation project judging process, you'll want to reference the text there. But if you look closely, the exceeds column is blank. And that's done on purpose because every now and then a team will come in and we never expected them to just blow our minds with some creative, innovative way to share that topic or that area with us. We can't articulate it as judges ahead of time on what we're looking for. But you see it and you know it. You just like, whoa, that team just blew us away. We never would have thought of that. And that's what the exceeds column is about. The exceeds is we never expected as judges to see something at this level, but we just did. And it happens. But I do want to comment here that it's rare. So if your team comes back with a bunch of threes, they did amazing and awesome. And you should be proud of them for that. Getting a 4 does happen, but it's rare. They should be striving for that 4. But do not be defeated. Don't feel worried that why didn't they give us a 4? Is we do reserve the 4s for those moments where like you're speechless. You really are. And the reason we leave a blank area is not only because we don't know what to expect with the 4 in the exceeds level, is we also leave space to actually write down what it is. What did that team do that we didn't expect that really made us say, wow, they need a 4 here? And our judge advisor then reviews that and they go through and say, yeah, you know what? That team did it. Let's give them a 4. So I do want to just kind of emphasize that is don't feel like you didn't accomplish your maximum if you don't get 4s. Getting a column full of 3s is wonderful. And you've done an amazing job as a coach if you can get your teams to 3s. If you can get a couple of 4s along the way, wow, amazing. Really, it truly is. Well, we are coming up on our hour. That's the end of what I have to share with you. I'm going to just open the floor for questions, comments, everything. Grace is waving to me already. So, Grace, you want to jump in?
Yes, I'm going to kind of summarize what we have discussed already, like pulling out the key pointers, as well as I have looked over the rubric and kind of have some pointers as well as to what our Southern Nevada teams often struggle with. I highly suggest to either pull up the digital version or print it out so your kids can mark it up and use it in the classroom and bring it out maybe every other week and like check and see where you are and see what areas you can improve on. That helps a lot. And in the same way that you guys are making missions for your robot game, at some point, you're going to have to figure out what missions you're picking. You're going to have to figure out the attachment that you're using to get there. You're going to have to figure out how to program it to do your mission. You should be taking that same approach to your innovation project. Because if you try to just come up with an idea and go straight to the solution, there's going to be a lot of things that are missing, and it's going to be very chunky, and it's not going to be clear to understand. It's not going to be clear to identify. So definitely use a strategy and maybe lean into the strategy that you use for your robot design and pull from that for your innovation project.
And Grace, I want to just jump in here, a little piece of advice from my own life. When I was going through graduate school, my advisor uses this phrase called project creep, is that when you're working on a project, there's always something more to do. And he would say, at some point, we can't let the project keep creeping. We have to say, this is what we're going to present. And so as a coach, you want to identify that too, because you want to make sure your team has a solution, but also has plenty of time to develop a well-rounded, concise communication of that solution. So you don't want to wait until the night before or even maybe the week of your competition. You want to make sure you have just a cutoff point to say, all right, this is what we're going to present to our judges. If we progress beyond our qualifier, then we'll have an opportunity to change it and make it better. And if we maybe end our season now, that doesn't mean you have to end with your innovation project. I've heard of many examples of teams that just fell in love with their project and continued on it. And they even went on to get a patent or have the local, the local political structure actually adopt their policy or whatever. So there's plenty of great stories of teams who, you know what, you just have to stop, present what you got, but there's plenty of time in the future to keep making improvements. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And then going back to making sure everyone's included and using that inclusion aspect of core values, we really want to look at the takeaways that you're getting from FIRST, because FIRST isn't about winning awards and it's more than robots. It's what the kids are learning every day. And so a part of that is the STEM skills or STEAM skills that they're learning, as well as the life skills that they're learning. So a kid that only works on an innovation project is only going to have the perspective of innovation project. They might not know anything about coding or building a robot, and they might be like fall in love with it. But if they don't have the opportunity to explore it, how will they ever know? So make sure that you're giving everybody a chance to at least learn a little bit of each area. And then a very important thing that we need to put out there as much as we can is that FIRST is really inclusive, in the sense that if you have a team member that is special needs, neurodivergent, has a physical disability, we will accommodate. But we do need to know ahead of time. So someone mentioned that they have a student that has trouble presenting. If that is something that you just can't help them through and they are they're having a lot of struggles with it, like it's more than just being shy, please bring it up to anyone that you see in a red shirt at the competition, and eventually you'll get back to me. And if you see me at the competition, or if you can shoot me an email beforehand, that'd be super great, just to prepare those judges in the room to know that your team needs accommodation. But I also recommend that if it's a situation of the student being shy, I really suggest to work with them. And even if it's not to the standard of the other students, if they're able to develop their speech, it really makes a difference. We had a student when I was in First Lego League that would say about a sentence per week. And by the time that they were done with the program, so they're 6 years in the program, they were able to do a whole presentation by themselves. So sometimes it's just a matter of time and working with them. A very important thing that almost I wouldn't say every, but about 40% of Southern Nevada teams struggle with is your solution one idea or multiple? If your solution is more than one idea, try to narrow it down to that one idea. I know that a lot of teams try to accommodate and come to a consensus by putting multiple ideas into one, but sometimes ideas don't necessarily line up, and you'll know when that happens. So just be aware of that, and that is a big part of the rubric. That goes into design line 2. If you really wanted to know how specific it was, it's on design line 2. That's all about that. Going into the create section, line 1 specifically, can your team explain the solution in under 3 sentences or about 3 sentences? If your team cannot articulate your solution in 3 sentences, you guys probably don't have a good grasp on it, or you need to work on how you're going to communicate that. Because sometimes you guys have a lot of great ideas, but there's a lot that's being thrown out, but it's not a clear thread from start to beginning or what your solution actually is. So you want to be able to explain it to a 5-year-old. And if you can explain it to a 5-year-old, then add all those details to explain it to like an expert or a judge. Did you mention the innovation project share night?
No, because that's very unique to Southern Nevada. So I don't know who all is listening to it, but we do have, actually it's coming out of one of our teams down here. One of our teams has, for the last few years, hosted what we call an innovation project share night. This is a great opportunity. What we do is, actually the team organizes this. I just advertise it for them. They invite other teams from the Las Vegas area to come together, and in an evening, they will find experts and community members for the teams to share with. So it addresses a couple of the rubric comments there. It's an opportunity for the teams to share what they've got to that point, get feedback on it, but also to learn from other teams as part of this year's theme. And we do have that. So if you're available in the Las Vegas area, that is October 28th on a Monday night. I hope it's not, I'm not mixing up the 28th or 20th. I believe it's October 28th. I have shared it out to our Southern Nevada teams to get that information. But it's a great idea if you're not in Nevada. It is a wonderful, very simple idea of just getting the teams together, find 3 to 5 experts-ish. I know experts is a very wide, loose term. just people who may be interested in providing feedback to come in there and they come together and they gather for a night and just hear each other's innovation projects.
Yeah. And any team that goes to the Southern Nevada Innovation Project Night, please use it and please talk about it in the judge room, because that is a clear form of iterate. And I can guarantee that your team will be able to develop your idea even more from that. So please, like, you will significantly improve your score in the iterate section. Adding on to that,
I was going to say a big shout out to John Giro and Vaughn
yes.
White, who are coaches who were formerly at Red Rock Elementary, have moved over to Cannon Junior High. They do all the work, and I just want to make sure that they get recognition for the awesomeness that they do. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Oh my gosh, they're so amazing. Adding on to the idea of expressing and communicating, the judges only know what you tell them. What is brought into the room is all that they know. And that also applies to if you make it to championships. They can't use any prior knowledge from your previous events. It has to be in the room. So if you want to communicate something to the judge, you need to make sure to include it in your presentation in some form. And sometimes maybe, like, if it's not necessarily connected directly to innovation project or robot design, maybe it's more on the core value side. Maybe it's just general team things or something you learned through the processes of robot design or innovation project. You can include that stuff in that last section, because that's just a general overview. That's anything that your team wants to share that you might have not been able to share in the other parts. So please communicate everything that you want the judges to know, because they won't know it if you don't tell them.
Wonderful.
And I think that's all I have.
Okay. Well, I was trying to keep this an hour, well, just a little bit over, but I do appreciate everyone's time tonight. I want to say thank you very much to Grace, our Southern Nevada Judge Advisor, for contributing quite a bit and very helpful insight too. I know Caroline Hansen was in the chat answering a lot of our questions. She's our Northern Nevada coordinator. Scott Duncan, who is helping with the AV and recording. Nainami, our first senior mentor. I do appreciate all of them supporting this special webinar for us tonight. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask. Do send them out to myself, to Grace, to Caroline. We would love to answer them for you. And most importantly, have fun. It is one of the core values for FIRST. It applies not just to our team members, it applies to our coaches just as much. So do enjoy the season, learn something, discover along the way as well about the oceans and how we explore it. So thank you, everyone. I'm going to throw my email in the chat here. Appreciate everyone's time tonight. I hope you're having fun this season, and can't wait to see everyone at a future event.
Oh, and then there was a question about, I don't know if this person, I know there's some hands raised. You want to call those people?
I don't mind sticking around until everyone has their questions answered. Yeah.
Oh, what if you have the same idea as another team? That is A-okay. That happens a lot, actually. And no team comes up with the same solution. So you might identify the same problem, but there's a good chance that your solution is a little different. Also, we're not judging you off of the other teams. We're judging you on your team against the rubric. So yeah, it's no problem if you have an idea that's similar to someone else's.
Grace, the one caveat I want to add to that is I have seen situations, not so much with the innovation project, more with the robot, when one school has multiple teams.
That's a great point, yes.
Now, occasionally we do see situations where both teams really develop the same project or they have the identical robots. We do want to make sure that they have distinct, each team has their own distinct innovation project. If you happen to have the same area as another school, that's part of the world. That's how engineering and progress is made. But if you are two teams at the same school, be sure that each team develops their own project. It's just more opportunity fundamentally. But we really do want to see that ultimately each team has a maximum of 10 kids on it. And so each team should be developing their own innovation project. You shouldn't be using more than 10 students to develop one idea. Yeah. Good. What are we going to do next, Grace?
I was saying there are other people that are raising their hands.
Okay. Shmal, is that how you say it? Shmal, go ahead.
Yes. My question is on the robot design aspect. In the past, it used to be just 25% robot side, robot
Mhm.
design side. But this time there is robot design 25% and robot game 25%. So, if it is all about designing a robot that looks very complicated and all that, what exactly are they looking for in the robot design portion of it?
Yeah.
Great.
So,
So
oh,
I'll start with history, and then I'll jump into you as a judge advisor.
okay.
Historically, it used to be when we would do robot design, we'd actually put the game board in the judging room, and teams would a lot of times demonstrate the robot. And it really became, in some ways, an extension of the robot game. We purposely removed the robot board, the actual challenge mat, from the judging room because what we want to hear is a story about the design process behind the robot. What we see in the robot game itself is performance, and that's why we also say it's the robot performance. How's the scoring? Also, the robot game is a demonstration of core values. We see how the students themselves are operating at the board, cheering each other on. The design part, the robot design, is we really want to see the engineering behind it. We want to be able to hear from the teams the choices they made, why they made the choices, what were the iterative changes that they made to the robot, to the programs in the development of the robot that ultimately is out in the gym scoring points. And so there's a separation there. The robot game is really about seeing objectively what the robot can do. And the robot design part is the description and the journey of how that robot got to be what it is that day. That's the big distinction there. Grace, you want to take over?
Yeah, so it's similar in the sense of you covered a lot of amazing points. It is distinguished from the robot game in the sense that the robot game is how you score the points, and Nanami put something amazing in the chat, similar to how the robot design and innovation project are what we do and core values is how we do it. Robot game is what you do, and robot design is how you do it. So it's looking at the strategy behind your decisions. It's looking at the engineering design process that you followed and you learned about along the way. It's identifying engineering, not theories, but like structures. So like how do you learn about mechanics and how do you reinforce your attachment so it can hold the items that you have? How did you strategize to do multiple missions in one? Did you learn about sensors? Did you incorporate sensors? So it's looking into all of the ways that you designed your robot, not necessarily the robot game itself. We do look at the consistency. So like if you are able to show some type of chart or able to discuss like how consistent your robot is, because that is a part of the engineering design process. And how did you make your robot more consistent? Because that would fall into the iterate category. Yeah, I think that's kind of what it is. It's a separate thing on its own. So it is the 25% and the other part, because the other part is about the points that you're doing, whereas this part is about how you got there.
And there is a rubric that does follow the engineering design process. And I do invite you with your team to carefully go through the criteria listed on the rubric. And that hopefully will help explain and separate out the design process from the performance process or performance abilities. Yeah. Shamal, did that address your question?
Yes, thank you so much for adding that. Because every time I somehow get an opinion that or a formation in my mind, it's like the complication of the robot. It's not. It's basically the journey of the whole sensors and how did they even exercise them all and understood about every aspect and how they came to where they are.
Yes. And an important thing to know is we're really looking at what the students are learning, like STEM skills and engineering wise. So even if you didn't incorporate something in your robot, but you learned about it, we would like to know those things, as well as sometimes a basic robot. And if you can explain, sometimes people are like, oh, our robot's basic because we wanted a simplistic model. You really need to explain more than that, because in some ways, like a simple robot, if it's just simple because it's simple, that's not really learning engineering principles. But if you built a like wall specifically to push things a certain way and that's simple, we're looking at like those features. So simple robot doesn't always mean that a complicated robot does not always be a simple robot. It's looking at the process that you've taken to get there.
Awesome. Charles, you have your hand up. Do you want to go next?
Sure, thank you. Hey, a greeting from Arizona. I'm a coach for FL for many years, and you guys did a great job. Explain first. I can't, do that better, any better. So yeah, it's
Thank
great. So regarding the rubrics, I noticed that you have also mentioned this year the core value judging is a little different, or maybe a lot different, depends on how you view it. So in terms of judging, because I was a judge too, like, do you still put the same amount of weight into the core value part for the consideration of, like, awards or things like that? But it's just to do it different, or maybe in the judging session, what you allow students to also explain what they did in terms of core values. Do you have time for that, or no?
So they changed the feedback section at the end, and they generalized it a little bit more so that the teams can discuss any area. And the philosophy behind removing the core values rubric is the core values is how we do what we do. So you should be able to exhibit in everything that you do, and how you communicate, how you treat your team members, how you include everyone. And so it should be embedded values. So in the same way of that same exact concept, they have those little gear features on the rubrics. Those are the ones that are going to be marked for core values, and how it looks in the OJS, the official judging spreadsheet, or the Embed Hub also has the same one platform. You probably are familiar with it with judging.
Yes.
Yes. And so the rubric scores get inputted into the official judging spreadsheet. And now when you input the scores for innovation project and robot design, it will have a separate feature that automatically takes those specific gear scores into its own core values score. So it's still generating the same amount of scores for core values. It just looks different on the face. And we still have those 3 gracious professionalism scores from the robot game as well that are given.
Okay.
Yeah, and so Charles, go ahead.
Well, I guess so. Basically, when they're doing the presentation, usually at the end you have 3 minutes for the core value judges to ask questions about specifically how you guys meet, or those questions that specific core. So that's gone, right? And but the student can still talk about their team attributes.
Yes, absolutely, and we encourage it as well.
Gotcha. Yeah,
that's a great question.
Luis, you have some comments?
I was just going to hit home that when we're looking for our rankings in the Champions Award, we do take each of those 4 core areas, and they are still equal weighted at 25% each. So the core values is just as important and equally weighted as the robot performance, the robot design, and the innovation project. It's how we tease it out this year is a little different, where a lot of the emphasis was in the core values rubric before, with complementary information coming from the robot game. Now what we're doing is we're really emphasizing that the core values are how we do things. So we're going to look to the innovation project as well as the robot design and identify elements that are the core values elements and double count them with the additional robot game input as well. And you were commenting, I did put it back here on the screen, the new flow chart for this season. By the way, as a quick aside, in the engineering notebook at the end of it, there is a judging flow chart that is the incorrect older version. There's been a challenge update that did say, hey, go online to see this year's version. So if you are referencing the engineering notebook, there is an updated version now from what's published there. And when you do look at this one, there used to be more of a breakdown at the end of the judging session where there was an explicit 3 minutes dedicated to core values. Now it kind of gets grouped together into an 8-minute longer discussion where teams can present some thoughts of like, hey, maybe we didn't get a chance to touch on how we're inclusive as a team, or This is how we do teamwork. So there it's kind of being grouped and looked at in a different way, but all the elements are still there. It's just we're trying something new. We're iterating as itself, and we're trying to find other ways to improve the process. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great because then you save one judge in the judging room, right? So you can have only two judges to do that. It's just that sometimes beyond project and robot design, there's other outreach event that the team may be doing, and there's no good place to talk about it. Yeah, what do you think?
Very good.
Yeah, and also we still have those 3 optional awards. They're going to be on the feedback page on the rubric. So when you go to the rubric like PDF, when you have the 3 pages, it's going to be this one on the left, and it's in that bottom section. So we still give out core values awards. So we're still looking for like the breakthrough, the rising all-star, and the motivate. So it is important that you share that information, and that those awards can also be identified through the innovation project in robot design as well.
Yep.
Thanks.
Cool. Wonderful. Any other questions? Feel free to unmute yourself, throw them in the chat. We're having a great discussion here. All right. Going once? Going twice? I appreciate the feedback. We always have fun doing this. Thank you, everyone, for spending a Tuesday evening with us. I hope this information was very helpful to you. And as I said, if you have any questions, please let us know. Even if you're outside Nevada, we love talking first. So shoot us an email. We'd be happy to answer them for you. Good luck. Enjoy the season. And may your oceans be smooth sailing, right?